When you found Mom's mysterious note, your brother warned never play that tape. But what if you did? Claire's hand trembled as she held the yellowed envelope, its edges frayed by time. The faded ink of an unfamiliar scrawl promised secrets buried for decades, secrets that, once unearthed, would shatter every family myth she'd ever known. In this story, a long-forgotten letter and an old cassette converged to reveal a web of family lies, buried resentments, and a truth someone desperate wanted to hide. Watch as Claire unravels each clue, turns every page, and presses play on a secret that changes everything. By the end, you'll see how one tape's static glare can outshine a lifetime of silence. Question: have you ever been told, "Don't open it"? Comment, "Opened it" or "walked away." I'll share the most surprising responses in our next episode. Claire climbed the narrow attic ladder, each creak echoing through the silent loft. Boxes of old photographs and childhood mementos stood in neat rows, until she spotted the lone envelope tucked behind them. Covered in decades of dust, it seemed to glow under the single bare bulb. Her pulse quickened as she lifted it free, realizing that this simple slip of paper carried the weight of an untold legacy. With gloved fingertips, Claire traced the envelope's texture, brittle, almost translucent. The front read, "Do not let anyone else see this." No signature, no date. It was as if the writer intended only her eyes to uncover what lay inside. She hesitated, breath shallow, mind racing. Why had no one spoken of it? And who risked everything to keep it hidden? Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A voicemail from her brother Ethan rang through. His voice was urgent, strained. "Claire, whatever you do, don't play that tape. Promise me." She felt the tension in his words like a physical force. "Why?" she texted back, but the line went dead. Left alone with the envelope and an unplayed cassette, Claire realized she stood at a crossroads. Obey a warning or chase the truth. The dusty stereo sat in the corner, a relic from their childhood home. Claire wiped its surface, found the power switch, and plugged it in. The red rec light blinked once, lifeless now from years of silence. She lifted the cassette from the envelope. No labels, just a hand-torn piece of masking tape reading "Play Me." Her finger hovered above the button, heart pounding as memories of summer afternoons and family secrets flooded back. Every second felt charged. Claire knew that once she pressed play, the vault would open. Would she regret it, or would this revelation finally free her family from decades of lies? She inhaled deeply and let her finger fall. A tight shot on her fingertip sweeping down to press but. The click resonates, accompanied by the snap of a cassette mechanism. Her heavy breath fills the silence, foreshadowing the storm to come. As the tape whirred to life, Claire reminisced on the letter's first line. "I never meant for you to hear this." Instantly, a distorted voice crackled, a familiar voice yet warped with static. The intercut of the letter's ominous words and the tape's muffled opening note creates a disorienting blend of suspense. Claire paused the tape mid-static, looking directly into the camera. Can I really turn back now? That question pierces the viewer's curiosity, setting the stage for a journey deeper into hidden family history. Claire descended from the attic into the pale afternoon light streaming through a single dusty window. Clutching the envelope and tape, she felt the hush of the old house wrap around her like a secret. Wooden floorboards creaked beneath her feet as she made her way to the living room, where the family's oak dining table awaited, its surface scarred by years of dinners and whispered conversations. She placed the envelope on the table, smoothing out the creases. With a letter opener, she gently sliced the sealed flap. The paper inside was brittle, many shades lighter than the envelope, an inner sanctum of hidden words. Claire unfolded it and read the opening line in careful cursive. "My dearest Claire, I write these words knowing they may cost me everything." A chill ran down her spine. The signature line was missing, only the single word, "Mother," scrawled at the bottom. No date, no context. The letter unfolded in 3 distinct sections. Section 1, hushed confessions of an affair long past, one that threatened the family's foundation. Section 2, a plea for forgiveness, describing a night of betrayal that changed 2 siblings' destinies forever. Section 3, a warning. If you choose to ignore this, you may never know who you truly are. Claire's hands trembled as she absorbed each revelation. Lines about stolen photographs, midnight rendezvous, and whispered arguments echoed in her mind. Tears welled in Claire's eyes. She remembered her mother as affectionate, patient, ever steadfast. To learn of a love affair, and a child born in secrecy, felt like a fracture splitting her memory in two. She pressed her palm to her chest, breath shallow. The letter's weight wasn't just ink on paper. It was a betrayal that rippled through every family portrait she'd ever seen. Determined to verify the letter's claims, Claire scanned the margins for dates or initials. Only one odd marking caught her eye. The faint stamp of a local church's letterhead, almost erased by time. The imprint read, St. Catherine's, 1978. Claire gasped. Her own birth year. The implication was staggering. The affair might have taken place around her conception. With trembling fingers, she dialed St. Catherine's rectory. An elderly voice answered. St. Catherine's, how may I help you? Claire explained she was seeking any baptism records for her mother in 1978. There was a pause. Then, you'll need a written request and proof of relationship. As she hung up, Claire realized this quest would demand official documents, time, and perhaps unwanted attention. In the hallway, she found Ethan pacing. His face drained of color when he saw the open envelope. You read it, he said quietly. Claire nodded, her throat tight. We can't. If this is real, she whispered, our entire family tree could be a lie. The gravity settled in the room like heavy dust. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes as though echoing the storm brewing within. Claire sat back at the living room table, the binder of her mother's letter beside her and the creaky cassette player in front. She pressed the small REW button, listening to the familiar whir of the tape spooling backward. Each click of the mechanism seemed to echo with possibility. What hidden message lay waiting at the very beginning? When the tape stopped at its start, she exhaled, bracing herself, and gently cued it to play. A burst of static crackled through the speakers before a soft, slightly trembling female voice emerged. It was unmistakably her mother's, but younger, unsure, and layered with emotion. Claire's heart pounded as she strained to catch the first words, which sounded like a whispered prayer. If you're hearing this, I'm sorry. Her breath caught. The apology felt weighty, pregnant with secrets beyond a simple confession. As the tape unfolded, Claire heard details that matched her letter's revelations. Her mother described a secret rendezvous at a lakeside cabin in the summer of 1978, a relationship that blossomed quickly but carried the risk of scandal. She spoke of stealing away late at night, of a forbidden love that set her world ablaze, and of waking one morning to find the man gone, leaving behind only this recording. The voice on tape grew distant, then returned as if from another room, the sound of a baby crying. Claire's pulse jumped. Was it her own birth recorded here? The crying coalesced with her mother's voice trembling as she whispered, You were mine, my hidden miracle, and I had to protect you. A tear slid down Claire's cheek. The recording made the letter's words visceral. This was more than a story. It was an auditory window into her mother's deepest fears and steadfast love. Suddenly, the tone shifted. A male voice, low and urgent, cut in through the static. It was nearly indecipherable, but Claire caught fragments. If anyone finds out, you and the baby, gone. The ominous warning sent a shiver down her spine. Someone had threatened her mother. And by extension, possibly Claire herself, if this secret ever surfaced. The stakes were higher than she'd realized. This was a matter of life and death. Between the voiced sections, the tape hissed and skipped, sounding like ghosts trapped in the grooves. Claire noticed a repeating pattern in the static, an echo of what could be Morse code or an intentional audio watermark. Leaning closer, she tapped her pencil on the table, syncing with the pattern. Dot, dash, dot. Could it be spelling out a date or a name? She grabbed her notebook and transcribed the rhythm, determined to decode whoever had recorded that hidden layer. Claire pressed pause and sank into her chair, the room spinning slightly. She felt a swirl of emotions, empathy for her mother's impossible choices, outrage at whoever had issued the threat, and fear that this tangled past still held power over the present. She murmured to herself, I have to know who did this, and why. As the cassette player fell silent, Claire glanced at her phone's blank screen. Should she reach out to trusted friends for help, or go alone into her parents' study where old photo albums might hold clues to the man's identity? She weighed her options. Seeking outside help risked control of the secret. Staying solo could leave her vulnerable. Resting her hand on the still spinning cassette, Claire made a vow. She would honor her mother's courage, unearth the full truth, and reclaim her own history. With that resolve, she rose, tape in hand, and headed toward the study door, ready to piece together the puzzle hidden behind scratched grooves and faded ink. Claire pushed open the heavy door to her parents' study, where shelves held countless photo albums. She selected the one labeled Family 1970s, its spine cracked with age. As she opened it, yellowed pages revealed snapshots of birthday parties, summer barbecues, and family vacations. Yet among the smiling faces, she noticed a young woman, her mother, standing apart in one photo, eyes distant, clutching a small diary. Claire's curiosity flared. What story did that diary hold, and why was it never mentioned? Tucked between two pages was a black and white portrait of a man Claire didn't recognize. He wore a crisp suit and an intense expression, as if guarding a secret. The back of the photo bore only the inscription, "Never to be shown." Claire's pulse quickened. Could this be the man from the tape? The forbidden lover who vanished and left her mother with a lifetime of hidden pain? On the desk lay another relic, her grandmother's leather-bound journal. Flipping through, Claire found a dated entry from 1978. "I suspect your mother carries a heavy burden. She walks with eyes that do not see us." The entry ended abruptly, torn at the margin. Claire realized her grandmother had known something but chose to protect her daughter's secret. The family loyalty ran deep, and so did the code of silence. Next, Claire unearthed a stack of handwritten childhood stories she and her brother had penned in school. One assignment read, "My hero is Mom because she always keeps us safe." Beneath her words, Ethan had written, "My hero is Dad because he's never around." The stark contrast hinted at long-buried resentment. Perhaps Ethan sensed their father's absence before Claire did. Those simple essays now took on weight as clues to the family's fractured past. Claire found a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Unlabeled envelopes bore dates around the summer of '78. Inside, flowery cursive spoke of longing and regret, sent not to a lover but to nowhere, unsent. Each draft ended with, "What if they find this?" Claire's throat tightened. These were letters her mother never mailed, drafts of guilt and fear that corroborated the cassette's confessions. Studying the desk drawers, Claire discovered a hidden compartment, a small safe embedded beneath the desktop. The combination lock was set to her mother's birth date. Hands trembling, Claire punched in the numbers and lifted the lid. Inside lay old legal documents, a guardianship agreement, a birth certificate with her mother's former surname, and a sealed envelope stamped, "Open on your 18th birthday." Claire realized the truth was meant to be hers eventually, but circumstances had delayed its revelation. Among the documents, she found her father's military discharge papers. It listed his name and honorable service, but the listed next of kin was not Claire's mother, but the missing man from the photograph. That revelation hit Claire like a thunderbolt. Legally, her father may have been someone else. Her lineage and her identity were suddenly up for debate. Claire dragged a large sheet of paper to the floor and began sketching a family tree. Starting with her grandmother at the top, she added her mother, an unknown father at her birth, then Claire and Ethan. As the branches spread, she left space for a second paternal name beside her mother's. The empty branch pulsed with questions, and the hope that answers would soon fill the gaps. Sitting amidst photographs, journals, and official papers, Claire rested her hand on the safe's lid. The weight of her lineage pressed down, but with it came purpose. She whispered to the empty room, "I will uncover the truth, no matter how painful." As dusk settled outside, the study glowed with the soft light of her resolve, and the faint promise that family history, though tangled, could finally be unraveled. Claire returned to the kitchen table, the binder of documents stacked beside her like a tower of suspicion. She slid back to the letters page where the church's faint St. Catherine's 1978 stamp peeked through. This time she examined the margins more closely. Tiny pencil marks formed an arrow pointing to a single phrase. "I never meant for you to hear this." Beneath it, almost imperceptible, was a second arrow drawn in faded blue ink. It pointed to an underlined word, miracle. Why underline that? Claire's heartbeat accelerated. She sensed this simple emphasis concealed a deeper pointer. Determined to interpret her mother's intent, Claire fetched a small desk dictionary and an old Morse code guide she kept for hobbyist puzzles. She considered that miracle might be a passphrase or a clue to a cipher. Flipping the codebook, she located the Morse representation for miracle. She tested reading the cassette's earlier static bursts against this pattern. Though imperfect, several of the tape's hisses aligned with dots and dashes in that sequence. It seemed her mother had hidden a coded audio message, believing only someone perceptive enough would notice the underlined cue. Claire returned to the cassette player and cued to the segments of white noise where she'd heard the rhythmic hiss. With notebook and pencil, she transcribed a section of static into dot and dash markings. When she matched them against the code for miracle, the letters began to spell out a name. John, John, likely the mysterious man in the photograph. But there were two more patterns suggesting a last name. She repeated the exercise for longer spans, revealing C-L-A-R-K. Together they spelled John Clark. The coded hiss confirmed her mother had encoded the name of her secret lover directly onto the tape. Armed with John Clark, Claire searched her grandmother's journal for any mention. Sure enough, she found a fleeting reference under a different date. "I warned her against John Clark. His departure would haunt us." The entry corroborated her decode. John Clark was real, and his disappearance had left a void both legal and emotional. Claire felt both validation and a pang of sorrow. The man who once held her mother's heart was a ghost in her family tree. Next, Claire examined the rest of the letter. Midway through, her mother had inserted a parenthetical note. "Meet me where the river divided the mill's two gates." The phrase felt poetic, yet precise. Claire recalled that their hometown had an old mill near Riverside Park. With renewed purpose, she resolved to visit that location. Could it conceal another piece of the puzzle, a hidden diary, a final letter, or perhaps a tombstone marking John Clark's fate? Claire texted Ethan. Decoded name John Clark. Meet me at Riverside Park's old mill at dawn. He replied swiftly, "On my way, be careful." In that moment, Claire felt the weight of partnership. The quest was no longer solitary. They would face the next clues together. The underlined miracle had bridged past and present, ushering her into territory where history and mystery intertwined. That evening, Claire packed essentials in a small backpack. Her grandmother's journal, the letter, the cassette, a flashlight, and her phone. She slipped the binder into a protective sleeve and tucked the cassette player beneath her arm. Outside, the sky deepened to indigo, but inside her, a spark of anticipation ignited. The mill promised answers, perhaps even confrontation with old enemies of her mother's making. Before bed, Claire revisited the underlined phrase one last time. "I never meant for you to hear this miracle." She realized her mother had anticipated that only a child born of that forbidden love, a miracle, could unlock the truth. The underlined word was both a confession and a key. Claire smiled softly, feeling the ache and pride of that realization. Tomorrow, at the river's edge, she would step across the divide into her family's most guarded secret. Claire arrived at the old mill site just before sunrise. Mist curled over the river, swirling around the ancient stone bridge that once led to twin water gates. The air smelled of damp moss and fallen leaves. Ethan pulled up next to her in his car, windows fogged. He stepped out, rubbing his hands together for warmth. The siblings exchanged a determined nod before venturing onto the crumbling walkway that arched over the gently flowing water. Following the letter's clue, Claire traced her fingers along the whistle post-style railing until she found a carved initial M+J, etched decades earlier into the stone pillar. Beneath it, a shallow depression, almost like a worn keyhole, hinted at long-removed hardware. With her flashlight, Claire illuminated the river gate below. Two metal flaps, corroded but still connected to a mechanism. This was where her mother and John Clark must have met in secret. At the river's edge, Claire set up the portable cassette player on a flat boulder. She popped the tape in and pressed play. The static greeted them, mingling with the sound of lapping water. Then her mother's voice emerged, softer here, as if speaking directly to Claire. "If you've come this far, you're brave enough to know the truth." Ethan glanced at his sister, eyes dark with concern. The recording continued, describing how John Clark had set a hidden compartment, an oilskin-wrapped box, beneath one of the gate mechanisms, to be retrieved by Claire when she was ready. The tape crackled. "Lift the left gate's hinge pin, then turn it clockwise 3 times. Push the panel, and you'll find what I hid for you." Claire paused the tape and looked at Ethan. He knelt beside the hinge, despite the rusted creak, and carefully removed the pin. 3 precise clockwise turns later, a section of the corroded metal gate shifted inward, revealing a small cavity. Inside lay a weathered oilskin bundle, tied with fraying twine. Claire's gloved hands shook as she unfurled the oilskin. Inside was a tarnished tin box, its lid inscribed, "For my daughter." Her breath hitched. She pried it open to reveal a stack of faded photographs, a folded letter shorter than the first, and a small silver locket. Each item felt precious, a personal time capsule from a mother to a child she never publicly acknowledged. The top image showed a young man standing by the river gate, face turned toward the camera, eyes uncertain but hopeful. Claire recognized the resemblance immediately. The same angular jawline in their grandfather's portrait. These photos confirmed John Clark's identity and his genuine affection for her mother. A second photo captured them together, arms entwined in innocent embrace, before the threat had driven them apart. Claire unfolded the brief letter. In neat cursive, her mother had written, "My dearest Claire, I hid this here so you could know who loved you first. He was more than a secret. He was my refuge in a storm. If you ever feel lost, remember you are born of courage and love. Always yours, Mother." Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she read those words. The letter carried no blame or regret, only enduring love and the hope that Claire would carry her story forward. She opened the tiny locket to find 2 miniature portraits, one of her mother in summer white, smiling softly, the other of John Clark, his eyes fixed tenderly on the camera. On the inside of the locket's lid was engraved a date, August 12, 1978, Claire's birthday. The symbolism was profound. She was indeed their miracle, a living testament to love amid turmoil. Claire held the locket close to her heart, and Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The impersonal river now felt sacred, a witness to long-ago promises and present-day revelations. The siblings sat in silence, letting the dawn light wash over them as they absorbed the weight of what they'd discovered. No words were necessary. Their journey from doubt to understanding had reached a profound milestone. As the tape came to an end, the final whisper echoed, "Find me where the willow weeps by midnight's glow." Claire rewound the tape, their next clue resonating amid the ambient river sounds. Ethan glanced at her and asked, "You ready for more?" Claire nodded, resolve stealing her gaze. The path ahead led them deeper into their mother's hidden past, and toward answers that would reshape their family forever. As dawn's pale light deepened into morning, Claire and Ethan sat on the riverbank with the oilskin bundle beside them. The locket and photos felt like anchors pulling at their hearts. Claire traced the engraved date on the locket and sighed. "I never knew any of this." Ethan's jaw clenched as he stared at the silver casing. The siblings shared a look that combined exhilaration with unease. Each revelation created ripples that threatened to engulf their entire sense of self. Ethan picked up the photograph of John Clark and slammed it down on the rock. "All these years, I thought Dad was my father," he muttered. His voice shook with betrayal. "I called him Dad, trusted him, while Mom was hiding you and him." Claire flinched at his words, feeling guilt prick her. She had unearthed the secret that fractured their family. Now, Ethan's anger was a tangible force between them, demanding space and understanding. Claire snapped, "It wasn't my doing, Ethan. Mom trusted me to find this when the time was right." Her voice trembled with frustration. "She left these clues for me, so I could learn the truth, not to hurt us." She tucked the locket back into its tin box, I'm sorry you feel betrayed, but we can't ignore what's real. The distant chirping of birds punctuated her plea, reminding her that life beyond their turmoil continued. Silence stretched as Ethan stared at the flowing water. He whispered, "I can't just pretend Dad wasn't Dad." His words felt like a wall. Claire realized the emotional chasm between them. She sought truth, while he clung to the comfort of memory. Each sibling's need was valid, yet they were pulling in opposite directions. Silence stretched as Ethan stared at the flowing water. He whispered, "I can't just pretend Dad wasn't Dad." His words felt like a wall. Claire realized the emotional chasm between them. She sought truth, while he clung to the comfort of memory. Each sibling's need was valid, yet they were pulling in opposite directions. Left alone, Claire closed her eyes and placed the locket on her palm. She pictured her mother's voice on the tape. "If you ever feel lost, remember you are born of courage and love." She realized that courage sometimes meant forgiveness. First toward herself, then toward Ethan. She whispered into the cool air, "I need to help him understand." Claire rose and gathered the photographs and the letter. She walked a few steps upstream where Ethan stood gazing into the water. "Ethan," she called softly. He turned, shoulders rigid. She extended the photos toward him. "Look at this. His smile isn't just for Mom. Look at me in the locket. We're both his miracle." Ethan hesitated, then took the small box. As he opened it, Claire watched tears form in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of shared identity replacing anger. They sat side by side on the grassy bank. Ethan held the locket close to his chest. "I never knew love could feel like this," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry I yelled." Claire placed an arm around his shoulders. "We're learning together," she replied. "Mom trusted us to be siblings, first and foremost." The bond between them, once shaken, began to mend in the sunrise's gentle glow. Reunited in purpose, they reviewed the tape's final clue together. "Find me where the willow weeps by midnight's glow." They agreed to journey to the Willow Grove that night, together. No more solo quests. They would face whatever awaited as a team. As dusk settled, Claire and Ethan made their way to the old willow grove at the edge of town. The long, drooping branches rustled in the cool evening breeze. Lanterns once hung here for Midsummer's Eve, but now only moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting wavering shadows on the soft grass. The siblings stepped cautiously beneath the arching boughs, the promise of revelation heightening every sound. Claire held her phone flashlight under the trunk's knotted bark, scanning for any markings. There, near the base, a faint carving, an intertwined M+C symbol, Meltem's initials, and the year 1978. Beneath it, a small latch recessed into the wood. Ethan knelt to inspect it, brushing away moss and debris. The latch glinted silver, surprisingly well preserved under layers of bark and lichen. Claire and Ethan exchanged determined glances. Together, they lifted the latch, revealing a narrow compartment carved into the trunk. Inside lay an aged, leather-bound journal wrapped in oiled cloth, its lock rusted but still functional. Claire pried the lock open, and the journal fell into her hands like a forgotten prayer. Claire opened the journal to the first page. In neat, confident script, so different from the hushed tone of the letter, her mother wrote, "Under the willow, I left behind the real story, one I never had the courage to tell in person." The entry continued, detailing conversations between her mother and John Clark, dreams of eloping, discussions of their child's future, and fears about the syndicate-like threats hinted at on the cassette. The journal revealed her mother's inner turmoil and unwavering love, capturing raw emotion along with calculated plans for concealing their child's lineage. Tucked into the journal's back cover, Claire found one last letter addressed to both her and Ethan. "My dear children, if you found this journal, know that my heart has always been with you. I hid my fears and my truths, but I could never hide my love. May you carry our story forward with the same bravery that has guided you here. Love always. Mother." Claire's eyes welled up as she read the words. The heartfelt epistle acknowledged her children's pain and gave them her blessing to seek truth without shame. Ethan placed a steady hand on Claire's shoulder, both comfort and solidarity in his touch. The journal's contents were a catharsis, a confirmation of what they had discovered and a compassionate explanation from their mother. The siblings shared a moment of silent communion, the willow's branches swaying as if in benediction. Claire closed the journal and looked at Ethan. "This is more than a secret," she whispered. "It's our family's true foundation." Ethan nodded, tears glistening. "We'll make sure the next generation knows this isn't a shameful tale, but one of love and resilience." They gently placed the journal back in its compartment, locking it once more, knowing its contents were safe yet accessible for future family gatherings. As they stepped from beneath the willow canopy, the moon emerged fully, bathing the grove in gentle silver light. The siblings walked side by side back toward town, the echoes of their mother's words guiding each step. The hidden truth no longer held power to hurt. Instead, it became a source of healing, an inheritance of honesty. Claire and Ethan stepped into their childhood living room, the journal and photographs held like fragile treasures in their hands. The walls were lined with framed family portraits, smiling faces from holidays and milestone birthdays, all underpinned by the secrets they now carried. The siblings exchanged a glance. It was time to confront their parents and share the journey they'd undertaken. Their mother, Anne, sat on the edge of the sofa. Knitting needles paused mid-air when she saw them enter. Her eyes widened as Ethan gently set the locket and journal on the coffee table. Claire spoke first. "Mom, we found your letters, the cassette, and everything hidden beneath the willow." Anne's knitting clattered to the floor as tears welled and streamed down her cheeks. She covered her face, her shoulders trembling. The weight of decades of silence had finally lifted, and the release was audible in her soft, convulsive sobs. Their father, David, entered from the kitchen with 2 cups of tea. His calm demeanor vanished at the sight of the journal's leather binding. He dropped the cups, startling the cat off the armchair. "Anne, what have you been keeping from us?" he asked, voice shaking more than his wife's. Claire and Ethan exchanged a steadying look. Ethan chose honesty. "Dad, John Clark was your predecessor as Mom's partner. Before you, Claire is his daughter. We know everything." David's face went pale, the lines of his years etched deeper. After a long silence, he whispered, "I always wondered why I felt like a latecomer in my own family." His voice cracked as he reached for Anne's hand. The room erupted with conflicting emotions. Anne sobbed at length, apologizing for the pain her secrecy had caused. David, wounded but compassionate, admitted his own fears. He had married Anne thinking she was free of past ties, and now felt both betrayal and relief at learning the truth. Ethan confronted feelings of abandonment and relief in equal measure. "I'm angry," Ethan said, voice stiff, "not at you, Mom, but at the fear that made you silence us." Claire placed a hand on his arm. "We understand now. We can't change the past, but we can heal together." In the hush that followed, Anne reached into the journal and pulled out that final letter addressed to her children. She read aloud, "My dearest Claire and Ethan, I never meant to hide you from the world. I did it out of fear, to protect you both." Her voice quivered but grew stronger with each line. As she folded the letter, she met her children's eyes. "Please forgive me," she whispered. Tears flowed anew, but forgiveness mingled with relief. David pulled Anne into his arms, and the 4 of them formed a circle of reconciliation. Tears, apologies, and promises flowing freely. Later that evening, after the initial storm of confession and tears, Claire and Ethan helped their parents settle into the den. They spread the journal's pages across the coffee table and began plotting how to integrate this newfound history into family life. They discussed celebrating an annual Legacy Day to honor John Clark and their mother's courage, ensuring the story would be told to future generations. News of the family's revelations spread among close friends and relatives. Instead of judgment, Claire and Ethan encountered empathy. Aunts, uncles, and cousins offered embraces and shared their own stories of long-held secrets. A family group chat lit up with supportive messages. "Your mother showed incredible strength. We're proud of you for uncovering the truth." This outpouring confirmed that vulnerability could yield deeper connections, not shame. With acceptance established at home, Claire and Ethan decided to record a series of video messages, anonymized reflections on their journey, to help others grappling with family secrets. They talked to therapists, historians, and sibling pairs who had navigated similar paths. As they posted these legacy stories online, the positive response reshaped their narrative from one of scandal to one of empowerment. A week after the emotional family reckoning, Claire sat at the kitchen table surrounded by folders of old paperwork she'd found in the hidden safe. Among them were John Clark's original letters, handwritten confessions of love and fear, alongside legal documents, a sealed paternity acknowledgement, and a power of attorney form naming John as their mother's emergency contact in 1978. These revelations made everything official. Claire and Ethan were, in fact, Clark's children. Holding the paternity form in her hands, Claire trembled, realizing her identity was now irrevocably rewritten. With Dad's hesitant blessing, the siblings accessed online archives and microfiche at the local library. They found John Clark's newspaper mentions, a brief engagement announcement in a fall 1977 social page, and, tragically, an obituary for a man of the same name who perished in a factory accident in December of that year. The dates matched the timeline in the cassette. Claire felt a mix of grief and relief. She now knew her father's fate, and the reason her mother had shielded her from the truth. Claire closed her laptop and sank back in her chair, tears spilling freely. "He died before I was born," she whispered to Ethan. He placed a consoling hand over hers. "No," he corrected gently. "He lived for a short time after you were born, long enough to sign those papers." The knowledge that her real father had acknowledged her existence before his untimely death brought a bittersweet comfort. She was truly his daughter, a living legacy. Guided by the sealed power of attorney, Claire and her family arranged to meet with their mother's longtime attorney, Mrs. Gilbert, in her mahogany-paneled office. The lawyer presented a second sealed envelope marked, "To my children, read when you're ready." With trembling hands, Claire broke the seal. Inside lay a final will. It bequeathed a small lakeside cottage in John Clark's name directly to Claire and Ethan, preventing it from falling into their father David's estate. Their mother's intent was clear. The cottage was a sanctuary for the truth and their shared heritage. David cleared his throat, eyes moist. "I never contested it," he said softly. "I understand why she did it." The legal formalities played out, but more important was the family's collective acceptance. They drove together to the cottage's address, a cozy two-story by the lake. The cottage windows reflected the sunset, promising both reflection and renewal. Inside, wallpapered walls bore faint flower patterns, and hardwood floors creaked familiarly. The siblings explored room by room. In the attic, they discovered an old journal with John's handwriting, describing his dreams for a family he never got to raise. Claire read aloud passages about quiet mornings by the lake and watching her mother's laughter. Images she'd only glimpsed in faded photographs, now brought to life in text. Standing on the cottage's wraparound porch, Claire inhaled the cool lake breeze. She turned to Ethan and said, "This is ours. Mom's gift and Dad's last embrace." Ethan nodded, eyes shining. They resolved to repair the cottage, making it a place where future generations could learn their true story. That night, back at home, Claire drafted a heartfelt letter to extended family and close friends, sharing the journey from mystery to revelation. She ended it with, "Our story is one of bravery, love, and the courage to face the past. We welcome you to join us in honoring John Clark's memory and embracing the truth he died to acknowledge." As she clicked send, a sense of peace settled over her. Responses flooded in, messages of solidarity, anecdotes of loved ones lost too soon, and congratulations on reclaiming their heritage. The family realized they were not alone. Their willingness to unveil painful secrets had inspired others to confront their own hidden histories. Claire closed her eyes, envisioning the future: summer mornings at the lakeside cottage, laughter echoing among willow branches, and journal entries passed from hand to hand. The secrets were no longer burdens. They were the scaffolding of a stronger, more authentic family bond. The next day, Claire and Ethan returned to the house determined to confront the extended family at Sunday's gathering. They arrived early and set up the living room. The journal opened to the Willow Grove entry and framed photos of John Clark and Anne together. Claire arranged the cassette player on the coffee table, Ethan loading the tape. Their parents watched nervously from the doorway, understanding the emotional storm about to unfold. By mid-afternoon, aunts, uncles, and cousins filed in, exchanging polite greetings. The scent of fresh apple pie and coffee filled the air, a comforting backdrop to the tension. Claire stood in the center, heart pounding, and asked for everyone's attention. The chatter faded as familiar faces turned toward her, curiosity and concern mingling in their eyes. Claire pressed play, and the room filled with the static-laden voice of her mother. Gasps rippled through the audience as the confession of the lakeside cabin played out. Some relatives exchanged shocked glances. Others covered their mouths when the male voice issued the chilling threat: "If anyone finds out, you and the baby gone." A hush settled. The weight of danger once faced by Anne, now shared by all. When the tape ended, Ethan lifted the leather-bound journal and read the final letter aloud. "My dear children, may you carry our story forward with the same bravery that has guided you here." Tears flowed freely around the room as the depth of Anne's love and fear resonated with each listener. Claire watched as the revelation transformed disbelief into empathy. Aunt Marge stepped forward, trembling. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered to Anne. Their mother, voice shaking but resolute, explained how shame and fear of scandal had kept her silent. One relative after another shared how they, too, had harbored secrets. The gathering became less a confrontation and more a communal confession, a cathartic release of hidden stories. As tears turned to soft laughter, cousins embraced, and grandparents clasped hands. Anne wept silently, grateful for acceptance. David held her close, offering a whispered apology for any pain his silence might have caused. Claire and Ethan stood together, relief flooding them as old wounds began to heal in the presence of love. Claire proposed a ritual: each family member to write one secret or regret on a slip of paper, then burn them together in a safe ceremony by the Willow Grove. It symbolized letting go of past shame and moving forward united. Nods of agreement circled the room, sealing a newfound pact of honesty and support. By the evening's end, stories once suppressed were now shared over dessert. Laughter, tears, and heartfelt conversations wove a tapestry of connection. The family decided on an annual Truth Day to honor both the pain and resilience of their shared history. The gathering closed with a toast, glasses raised in honor of John Clark's memory and Anne's courage. The embers of the family bonfire by the willow still glowed red as Claire and Ethan returned to the house. The air was thick with smoke and shared secrets. Although the Truth Day ceremony had brought relief, a deeper undercurrent of emotions stirred: guilt, regret, and the fear of reopening old wounds. Claire paused at the threshold, inhaling the night air, and felt the weight of unspoken pain lingering in each breath. Inside, the relatives had dispersed. Only a few late-night conversations trickled away by the kitchen's dim light. Claire found her mother sitting alone at the counter, head bowed over a cup of tea. Anne's shoulders shook as she repeated fragments of old fears. "I was so scared." Claire slid onto the stool beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her mother's back. "It's okay, Mom. We're here now." Yet Anne's tears betrayed how difficult it still was to fully reconcile shame with acceptance. Ethan sat across the room, flipping through the journal's pages. His brow furrowed as he revisited his mother's words, trying to find balance between understanding and lingering resentment. Claire joined him, and together they read of their mother's hopes and vulnerabilities. A moment of wordless solidarity passed. They closed the journal and leaned into a side hug, acknowledging that while the family's collective heart had opened, individual healing would be an ongoing journey. Later, Claire retreated to her childhood bedroom, now repurposed as her makeshift office. She replayed the day's events in her mind, questioning every decision. Had she moved too fast? Should she have given her parents more space? Her doubt was relentless, churning like the river they had visited. She pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering, "Did I do the right thing?" The question lingered. Honesty had come at a cost, and the emotional fallout was still unfurling. The next morning, Claire met her close friend Maya at a local cafe. Over steaming lattes, Claire confessed her anxieties. "I feel like I opened Pandora's box." Maya took her hand and said, "Pandora also found hope at the bottom. You gave your family the chance to heal." That insight lifted some of Claire's guilt. She realized emotional turbulence was a natural part of transformation, and that hope outweighed fear. Back home, Ethan and their father David had a quiet talk in the den. David admitted feeling like an outsider in his own marriage once the secret surfaced. "I promised to protect our family," he said. Ethan placed a respectful hand on his shoulder, replying, "You protected us badly then, but you're making up for it now." The exchange was raw yet compassionate, illustrating that healing required both accountability and empathy. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire found Anne smiling softly while watering the garden, one of her favorite relief-finding rituals. Claire knelt beside her and helped prune the rose bush. In the gentle act of caregiving, words weren't needed. Anne's quiet smile said it all. Acceptance was possible, and so was renewal. Claire returned to her desk and drafted a personal manifesto. "I will honor the past, but not be bound by it. I will speak my truth and listen to others. I will remind myself each day that courage and compassion go hand in hand." She posted the note above her monitor, a daily reminder of the emotional complexity they'd embraced. Later that night, Claire and Ethan sat on the porch swing, drinking hot cocoa. They watched the willow branches sway against the moonlit sky. Ethan spoke quietly, "This journey changed me, but I'm grateful. We'll carry this forward, together." Claire nodded, feeling the rhythm of the swing mirror her steady resolve. The emotional conflict remained, but so did their shared commitment to growth and honesty. Claire stood at her grandmother's old home, now vacant and overgrown. The white picket fence hung crooked, paint peeling like memory's veneer. She pushed open the gate, vines tugging at her coat, and stepped onto the sagging porch. Each floorboard creaked underfoot, echoing footsteps of those who walked here long ago. Inside, afternoon light filtered through lace curtains, illuminating faded floral wallpaper. Each scent, musty wood, old perfume, seemed to whisper her grandmother's presence. On the enclosed back porch, Claire found the swing where her grandmother once sat. She ran a hand along its worn armrest, recalling stories Anne had told of late-night confidences and whispered fears shared on that very seat. Claire imagined her grandmother greeting John Clark, comforting her daughter, and then carrying the burden of silence. The swing now held suffused echoes, the weight of untold recollections. In the sunroom, a dusty glass cabinet stood against the wall. Claire pried open its doors, revealing a few surviving treasures: her grandmother's brooch, china teacups, and, tucked at the bottom, a leather-bound portrait album. Inside, she discovered childhood photos of her mother with a little boy, dark-haired, mischievous eyes, the spitting image of Claire herself. The album bore no labels, but the resemblance was unmistakable. A second child, hidden from history. Claire flipped to a yellowed newspaper clipping taped inside the album. "Local boy vanishes, 1979. The headline described a toddler named Michael Adams, who disappeared near the river mill, never to return. Claire's breath caught. That boy was her half-brother, the product of her mother's lost time with John Clark. His disappearance explained the unfinished pages in her grandmother's journal. The miracle had cost another child his future. Tears stung Claire's eyes as she realized the depth of the family's hidden scars. She pressed her palm against the cabinet glass, the cold barrier between past and present. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Protect at all costs. But protection had become erasure, and erasure had led to tragedy. Claire murmured, "I will find out what happened to him." She spotted a stack of letters tied with a ribbon on a side table. The top one, addressed to M, began with apologetic regret. "I could not keep Michael safe. They took him before I could shield him." Below, Anne's younger handwriting begged for forgiveness. Claire's heart broke for the child she never knew and for the mother who lost him. The room felt hollow, an empty cradle of remembrance. Claire placed the letters gently back and stepped outside, closing the door behind her. Beneath the afternoon sun, she pressed a hand to her heart and vowed, "I will honor Michael's memory. I will tell his story." The swing creaked faintly behind her, as though echoing assent. Back in town, Claire opened her laptop and typed, "Michael Adams' disappearance, 1979, into the search bar. She found an old blog post by a local historian speculating about the cold case. An email address for the historian glowed at the bottom. Claire crafted a careful message, introducing herself as family, seeking any records or leads. She hit send, hoping to breathe life into a story long silent. That night, Claire added a new chapter heading in her binder, "Michael Adams, Forgotten Son." She penciled key questions. Where did he go? Who saw him last? What happened to his family? As she closed her folder, the attic clock chimed midnight. Time both fleeting and eternal, Claire realized her journey had shifted. What began as a quest for personal truth had become a mission to restore a lost life's place in her family's history. Claire spent the next morning at the local historical society, poring over old newspapers, birth records, and police reports. Sunlight streamed through high windows as she flipped page after page of microfilm. The archivist, Mrs. Langley, guided her to the missing persons ledger for 1979. There, next to a faded photograph of toddler Michael Adams, was a brief note, "Vanished near River Mill. Investigation ongoing." No mention of family ties. Claire's heart sank. Her half-brother's disappearance was publicly recorded, but privately erased from her family's narrative. Back home, Claire cross-referenced names and dates in online genealogy forums. She discovered a distant cousin had posted about a rumor. The child was taken in by a traveling carnival family. That lead was thin, but tantalizing. She emailed the poster, introducing herself and requesting any details. Hours later, the reply came. A scanned postcard from 1980, showing a toddler in a carousel seat, scrawled, "Mike miss you," on the back. The handwriting matched Anne's younger script. Claire's pulse raced, evidence that Michael had survived at least a year beyond his vanishing. Determined to piece together what happened, Claire arranged interviews with elderly neighbors who lived near the mill in 1979. Sitting in the sunlit kitchen of Mrs. Greer, Claire listened as she recalled the circus train passing through and a frantic mother searching the riverbank at dawn. "I'll never forget her cry," Mrs. Greer whispered. She begged for help. Claire jotted notes, her empathy deepening for the panic that must have gripped her mother. Claire attempted to request police records, only to find they'd been archived under closed status with sealed files. She submitted a formal FOIA request, but the waiting period meant delays. Frustration bubbled. She realized uncovering the full truth would require patience and persistence, even as days passed with little progress. Ethan offered to help. He mapped out a timeline of their mother's whereabouts in 1978 to 79, based on hospital records and town directories. Comparing dates, Claire saw that Anne had checked into a distant city hospital around the time Michael disappeared, perhaps indicating a planned escape or concealment strategy. The siblings pieced together a possible scenario. Michael was hidden for his safety, then slipped into foster care under a different identity to keep him secure. Late one evening, Claire found herself awake, tears staining her pillow. She felt overwhelmed by grief for a brother she never knew, and guilt for unearthing his pain. She wondered if digging deeper was cruel, but then she recalled the solidarity ceremony under the willow. Secrets, when faced, could heal rather than harm. She wiped her tears, renewed her resolve, and drafted her next emails to caseworkers and genealogy experts. A week later, a reply arrived from a genealogy database. A Michael Clark, born August 1979 in a neighboring state, spelled with an E at the end. His public records were limited but included a Social Security application listing his adoptive mother's maiden name, Fortune. Claire cross-checked census data and found a single Fortune family living near the state border. This slender thread offered hope. Her brother might have survived and thrived under a new name. Claire called Ethan, sharing the exciting yet fragile lead. They agreed to approach the Fortune family with care, recognizing that revealing his origins could upend another life. They drafted a respectful letter, explaining their connection and desire to know Michael's fate. Sending the letter felt like sending a piece of their mother's legacy into the unknown, both hopeful and terrifying. As the envelope slipped into the mailbox, Claire and Ethan held hands, heads bowed. The waiting period stretched ahead, uncertain and fraught. But together, they felt fortified by shared purpose. The unraveling process was messy and incomplete, yet each discovery brought them closer to understanding the full tapestry of their family's past. One afternoon, a plain white envelope arrived at Claire's doorstep, stamped with her grandmother's old handwriting, for Claire and Ethan. Inside, folded neatly, was a single sheet of stationery Claire recognized, her mother's favorite brand. No return address. A tremor of anticipation ran through Claire and Ethan as they opened it together at the kitchen table. Claire unfolded the paper to reveal her mother's unmistakable script. "My dearest children, if you're reading this, you've walked the path I could not tread alone. I have watched from afar, proud of your courage and humbled by your compassion. There is one more truth I must entrust to you, hidden until you were ready." Beneath the salutation lay a paragraph in which Anne confessed that, after hiding Michael with a trusted family friend, she had periodically checked on him through discreet letters and visits under an assumed name. She explained that the friend had remarried and moved away, and Michael had grown up believing they were his birth parents, receiving the name Fortune in kindness, not concealment. The letter continued with precise instructions. "In my desk drawer you will find a combination lockbox. The code is your birthday and mine, 08-12-1978. Inside there lies the final piece of your brother's history." Ethan's eyes widened. They raced to their childhood home's locked study and retrieved the lockbox. Hearts pounding, they entered the date and lifted the lid. Inside the box were 3 items. A letter addressed to Michael, written in Anne's mature hand, expressing her enduring love and explaining his true origins. Official adoption papers signed by the family friend and notarized. A faded photograph of Michael at age 5, standing beside Anne under the willow grove, her arms wrapped protectively around him. Claire held the photograph close, tears streaming. The letter to Michael read in part, "My beloved son, life carried me away, but my heart never left you. You are my miracle and my greatest joy. Though I watched from shadows, I loved you in full light." As they read, an ache of sorrow and relief washed over them. They realized their mother had maintained a hidden but loving presence in Michael's life. The adoption papers confirmed his legal name, Michael Fortune. The photograph underlined that their mother had never abandoned him. She had safeguarded him at great personal cost. Claire and Ethan sat in reflective silence, the lockbox open before them. They decided to honor their mother's final wish by refraining from immediate contact with Michael until they could ensure it would bring joy, not upheaval. Instead, they vowed to compile a family legacy binder, including every letter, photo, and artifact they had unearthed, to pass to Michael when the time was right. Ethan closed the lockbox gently and placed it on the table. He looked at Claire and whispered, "She trusted us to finish this story." Claire nodded through tears. "We will." They shared a quiet embrace, united by purpose and love. Before sealing the lockbox, Claire took a pen and wrote a short note to tuck inside. "To Michael, from your sister Claire and brother Ethan, may you know the depth of our mother's love." They slid the note in, closing the lid. The final letter, like a benediction, completed their mother's narrative and opened a future chapter of reconciliation and hope. Sunday afternoon found Claire, Ethan, Anne, and David seated around the large oak dining table, once a stage for holiday feasts, now repurposed for honest conversation. Plates of roast chicken and mashed potatoes lay untouched as each family member braced for the first normal gathering since the truth emerged. The air shimmered with both hope and unease, as past pains and new possibilities vied for attention in every glance and half-spoken word. Claire rose and tapped her glass. "To honesty," she began, voice steady but soft, "and to the courage it took to share our story." Ethan raised his glass beside her, adding, "And to the bonds that hold us together, no matter how tested." Their parents exchanged grateful smiles before lifting their own glasses. The simple act of toasting felt monumental, a collective vow to safeguard both truth and unity. As the meal commenced, conversation faltered. Anne cleared her throat and offered small talk about a neighbor's new puppy. David complimented Ethan's job promotion, yet beneath these polite exchanges lay undercurrents of tension, the unspoken question of whether they could ever truly move beyond the past. Each family member wrestled privately with the new dynamics, some eager to rebuild, others unsure how to let go of lingering hurt. Midway through dinner, a sudden crash rang from the kitchen. Ethan dashed to investigate and returned, sheepishly holding a broken gravy boat. Claire took a deep breath, realizing the mishap mirrored their fragile state. Even small missteps felt magnified. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand, whispering, "It's okay." He nodded, and together they laughed quietly, an unspoken reminder that mistakes didn't have to fracture their bond. Anne dabbed at her eye as Claire refilled her water glass. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused," she whispered, voice trembling. David reached across to steady her hand. "We're all learning, Anne. Love doesn't erase mistakes, but it helps us forgive." Their children watched the exchange, hearts warming as their parents modeled vulnerability, the very foundation of rebuilding trust. After dinner, the family moved to the living room for their old tradition, selecting a movie to watch together. Claire proposed a classic comedy, hoping for lightness. As the opening credits rolled, Ethan draped an arm around Anne's shoulders. David passed Anne a blanket. The cozy tableau, shared laughter and mutual comfort, felt like a healing balm, reminding everyone that simple joys could endure alongside hard truths. Later, as the credits ended, Anne hesitated. "There's one more thing," she said. From her purse, she produced a small envelope marked, "To Ethan." Inside was a letter from John Clark she'd discovered only that morning, an apology he'd written in the days before his death. It spoke of regret for leaving her and hope that their child would know both his darkness and his light. Ethan's eyes brimmed with tears. The family watched as he absorbed John's words, grappling with the nuances of forgiveness and the shadows of absent fathers. Silence settled as each person considered the letter's weight. Claire cleared her throat. "We've faced secrets that nearly broke us. Now we face the harder test, staying together through every storm." Their shared gaze affirmed commitment. Truth had tested them, but honesty and empathy would be their guide forward. That evening ended with a final ritual, lighting candles around a family portrait of 4 atop the mantel. Each member spoke one word that summed up their hope: healing, strength, forgiveness, unity, before placing their candle. As the flames flickered, the glow illuminated faces both changed and determined. In that quiet moment, they embraced the reality that family bonds, once tested, could emerge stronger and more resilient than ever. The next morning dawned crisp and bright. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen's lace curtains, dancing across the hardwood floor. Claire poured coffee for the family, the rich aroma signaling routine. Yet today felt different. Plates of fresh fruit and warm pastries sat on the table, beckoning them to share breakfast and, metaphorically, a fresh start. Over mugs of steaming coffee, Claire unfurled a map of the lakeside cottage. She outlined their vision, restoring the lakeside home where their mother's love had been cast in leather and ink. Ethan passed around sketches for a new dock and a garden where the willow once stood. Their parents listened, excitement replacing lingering sorrow. The project symbolized more than renovation. It was a commitment to building something enduring from their shared history. Claire spoke gently about the lockbox's letter for Michael. "We'll hold on to his story and share it when he's ready." Anne nodded, tears in her eyes. "I want him to know he was never forgotten." David added, "When the time is right, we'll reach out with respect and care." The family agreed. This next chapter would extend not just to themselves, but to the brother they had yet to meet. As a literal and figurative gesture, they chose to plant a young willow sapling in the cottage's front yard, a living reminder of resilience. Together, they dug a small hole in the dewy grass, the soil cool beneath their hands. Each family member placed earth around the sapling's roots, whispering hopes for growth. Claire stepped back, admiring the slender tree swaying gently, its promise of renewal palpable. Later, they gathered in the living room for a creative ritual. Claire handed everyone a blank card labeled "Our Commitments." One by one, they wrote personal vows, speaking truths when needed, honoring family memory, and supporting each other's dreams. They placed the cards into a wooden box carved with their mother's initials. The box joined the lockbox and journal on a special shelf, keeping their pledges close. The afternoon passed in laughter and purposeful activity. Ethan helped David sand and repaint the cottage's shutters. Anne and Claire sorted through old scrapbooks to create a then and now photo wall. Each moment blended past and present, removal of chipped paint, alongside placement of new frames, dusting old memories as they curated new ones. As twilight approached, Claire found Anne and Ethan on the dock's edge, gazing at the lake's mirror-like surface. No words were needed. The silent companionship spoke of trust regained. Claire joined them, and together they watched the sun dip below the far tree line. Within that stillness, they sensed that the fragile threads of their past had been rewoven into sturdy cords of unity. Back at home, Claire updated her personal manifesto, adding a new line: "We will not only honor the past, but actively shape a future filled with truth, love, and openness." She placed the manifesto beside the family commitments box, a constant guide for their unfolding story. In her mind, Claire rehearsed her closing message for Den Stories. Our journey from secrets to solidarity shows that the hardest truths can lead to the strongest bonds. If you've ever carried a hidden story, remember, sharing it can be the first step toward healing. With renewed purpose, she prepared to share their new beginning with viewers, ready to inspire others to plant their own willows of hope. As dusk settled over the lake, Claire stood on the newly rebuilt dock, its fresh wood planks warm beneath her feet. The willow sapling they'd planted earlier swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting rippling shadows on the water. She inhaled the cool air, feeling a profound calm after so many days of turmoil. Every ripple on the lake's surface seemed to carry away another fragment of fear, leaving in its place a steady sense of peace. Ethan approached, sliding his arm around her shoulders. They stood in companionable silence, watching lanterns glow in the windows of the lakeside cottage. In that quiet, words felt unnecessary. The journey they'd traveled, from dusty attics to river gates, had forged a bond deeper than any spoken promise. Across the yard, Anne and David emerged onto the porch. Seeing their children united, Anne's eyes glistened. She stepped forward and pulled Claire into a warm embrace, then reached for Ethan's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with emotion, "for honoring our past and for building our future." David joined them, and the family formed a tight circle, lantern light illuminating tears of joy and relief. Later that night, Claire returned to her journal by the bedside lamp. She wrote a final entry titled "Healing Waters." "Tonight, I understood that true closure isn't erasing the past, it's embracing it. The lake holds each story we've uncovered. Now it will hold our hopes. With each wave, we release old pain and welcome what lies ahead." She closed the journal, her heart unburdened, yet full of gratitude for the journey. The next morning, a small group of neighbors gathered at the cottage for an impromptu celebration. Freshly baked pies and lemonade appeared, courtesy of caring friends moved by the family's story. Children ran across the lawn, laughter echoing beneath the willow's branches. Claire watched, reminded that healing often ripples outward, touching lives beyond the family circle. Before the guests departed, Claire invited everyone to write a word of encouragement or a memory on small tags tied to the willow's branches. One by one, they hung messages: bravery, forgiveness, new beginnings, family. The breeze set the tags dancing, creating a living tapestry of hope and solidarity. That evening, back at her desk, Claire recorded a short spoken-word reflection for Den's stories. Our story shows that the darkest secrets can become guiding lights when we face them with courage. In every family, there are hidden rooms waiting to be opened. May you step through them with strength and love. She ended her recording with a gentle smile, knowing her tale would inspire others to embrace their own truths. As she shut off the camera, Claire glanced at the mantel where the lockbox, journal, and family commitments lay. The words they had written, healing, strength, unity, glowed softly under the lamp. She whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a legacy." With that promise, she turned off the light, ready to greet tomorrow with an open heart. Claire's journey from hidden letters in an attic to healing waters by the lakeside shows that the hardest truths can forge the strongest bonds. If this Den Stories episode moved you, please hit like, subscribe, and tap the PID so you never miss another daily tale of courage and discovery. Share your own story in the comments. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? I'll feature the most powerful responses in tomorrow's video. Thank you for joining us on this epic quest through love, loss, and resilience. Tomorrow we'll bring you yet another gripping, fully scripted drama that peels back the layers of human emotion. So make sure you're subscribed and ready. Until then, remember, every untold story holds the power to heal, and every act of honesty can plant the seeds of new beginnings. See you tomorrow on Den Stories.